From the deepest shadows, where secrets are kept and stories are buried, a new tale is about to emerge. We often walk through life thinking we know the people around us, that we understand the world we live in. But what if everything you thought was true is just a carefully constructed facade? What if beneath the surface of everyday life, there are scars left by events we dare not speak of, and shadows that follow our every move? Get ready to question everything. We about to pull back the curtain and expose the hidden truths that lie just beyond our sight in the world of scars and shadows. What is lurking in your blind spot? Subscribe now and let's find out together. You won't want to miss what's coming next.
Welcome back, everybody, to Scars and Shadows, where horror lives and the darkness never dies. I'm your host, Damien, and tonight we're diving into one of the most anticipated horror films of 2026, which I've already seen, and this is a review of it, Evil Dead Burn. So, this episode contains full spoilers, including the ending and both post-credit scenes. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, stop now, go watch the film, and then come back. Anyway, so when I first heard that French horror director Sebastian Benetchik was taking over an Evil Dead movie, I knew we were going to get something different. His goal wasn't to copy Sam Raimi. It wasn't to remake Evil Dead Rise. His goal was simple: create the most brutal Evil Dead film ever made. And after watching it, I'd say he absolutely accomplished that. The film centers around Alice, a grieving widow who attends her husband's funeral at his family's isolated home. Instead of a simple gathering, the family is consumed by the forces of the Necronomicon, turning one by one into deadites as grief, guilt, and family trauma fuel the horror. So let's break down the story from beginning to end, because there's actually a lot more going on beneath all the blood and gore. The movie opens on a rainy afternoon as Alice arrives at the remote family estate following the death of her husband. The atmosphere immediately feels wrong. Nothing is exaggerated at first, just uneasy silence, strained conversations, and a family that has clearly been carrying old wounds for years. As the funeral begins, the audience learns that Alice never really felt accepted by her husband's family. His mother blames her for taking her son away. His brother is bitter over old arguments, and buried resentments begin to surface. Instead of a loving reunion, the funeral becomes a powder keg of grief, guilt, anger, and resentment. Now that emotional tension becomes one of the movie's biggest strengths. Before the supernatural horror even starts, the family itself is already tearing itself apart. Later that evening, while clearing out part of the old estate, one of the younger relatives discovers a hidden cellar sealed behind a crumbling stone wall. Inside are strange symbols burned into the wood, old chains hanging from the ceiling, and a weathered chest that has been clearly hidden for decades. Of course, horror fans already know where this is going. Inside the chest rests one of the cursed Necronomicons. But here's the thing, people. The Necronomicon in this movie is more like a scrapbook, because the family's grandfather was big into studying the Necronomicon, and apparently he was part of the Circle of Men, which we'll get back to here in a second on that. So, he broke down and drew things straight out of the Necronomicon, even the sayings and the warnings that were in the book. So this book is really more of a scrapbook and a detailed version, like I guess a duplicate or replica of the Necronomicon and all the other, and it actually shows Easter eggs of other events that have happened in the Evil Dead universe. So if you pay attention, you'll recognize some things in there. So, anyways, you know, it was wrapped in cloth and it was surrounded by melted candles and ancient religious artifacts. Suggesting someone long ago tried to imprison it rather than destroy it. So there's definitely a lot of winks to nods to the rest of the franchise, and bringing this movie in kind of brings things a little bit more full circle, so to speak. It ties in Evil Dead Rise very well. Um, it does a lot of interesting things. Like this character here, Jessica, pops up in a very, and she was in Evil Dead Rise. And she popped right up in the very opening credit scene. And let me tell you what, I'll never look at fishing the same way again on that aspect. But anyways, let's go back to the plot here. Um, so, ignoring every warning in this book, the family opens the book. Ancient passages are read aloud. The room grows unnaturally quiet. The lights flicker. The wind begins to howl. But somewhere in the darkness, something awakens. Now, what I love about this sequence is that the evil isn't in a hurry. It's stalking the house first. Doors open by themselves. Shadows move where no one is standing. Family members hear voices calling their names. They begin seeing things in mirrors and windows, making them question what's real. Now, the first possession is absolutely just crazy terrifying because it isn't immediate. The victim slowly changes. Their voice becomes distorted. Their smile stretches wider than it should. Their movements become unnatural. They're kind of like, they speak in twisted versions of personal memories, using secrets and guilt to emotionally torture the others before the violence begins. Now that is classic Evil Dead. The Deadites don't just want to kill you, they want to destroy your hope first. As more family members become possessed, the house transforms into a prison. Every hallway becomes a trap. Every room hides another nightmare. The survivors realize they aren't just fighting monsters, they're fighting the people that they love, whose bodies have become vessels for something ancient and evil. One thing I appreciated is that each Deadite still reflects part of the personality of the person that they once were. Their insults become deeply personal. They know exactly what to say to break someone's spirit before attacking. The film builds towards a relentless final act where nearly everyone has either been possessed or killed. Alice is forced to make impossible choices, fighting people she once considered family. The climax erupts into total chaos. Fire spreads throughout the house as Alice realizes the only way to stop the immediate outbreak is to destroy everything. Flames consume the estate while Deadites continue attacking through the smoke, creating some of the most visually intense scenes in the entire franchise. And let me tell you, that whole scene, I just gotta say it. That whole scene there in the house, you guys seen it in the trailer. Part of it was just freaking amazing, very intense, and it just seemed like one of those continuous shots. It was just the way it was filmed, and the whole film felt dark, gritty, especially with the colors and the saturation that was used in the film. And then using the house itself as literally the main area where the whole story just, comes out. It made it really feel very tense, very isolated. And it really had you on the edge of your seat. And all the actors did a great job. The one that played Alice, phenomenal job. You really felt her trauma. As with the loss of her husband, but also not only that, but the way that she was treated by her husband, and not only that, how his family treated her as kind of an outcast. It was very intriguing, and a lot of the Evil Dead franchise really focuses on a lot of different morals, and themes, I should say. Like this one was grief. Rise had a lot to do with motherhood, parenthood, in essence. Um, the Evil Dead in 2013 had to deal with addiction and battling addiction, all that kind of stuff. So I mean, there's these continuing themes going across the franchise, and I love the direction that they're going. So, anyways, back to what I was talking about. So at the end of the movie, Alice staggers away, believing that she had survived. But Evil Dead has always taught us one lesson throughout the whole series: you never truly defeat the Kandarian evil. So, with that said, let's keep on going here. So, you don't really defeat the Kandarian evil. You only survive until it finds its next victim. So, the director, Sebastian Vanacek gives this movie a completely different personality. Sam Raimi gave us crazy camera shots. Fede Alvarez gave us relentless terror. Lee Cronin gave us apartment horror. Vanacek gives us more of a psychological horror mixed with absolute brutality. Everything feels dirty, raw, hopeless. The Deadites aren't just monsters, they're predators. And the other thing is, going into this gore. So, if you came looking for blood, well, you got it. This movie may actually surpass the 2013 Evil Dead, in my opinion. Every kill feels painful. There's bone snapping, there's heads are rolling, skin's getting torn, bodies are mutilated. Nothing is quick, nothing is clean. And as a makeup artist, I went to school for all that, but I have to say the practical effects are incredible. And there's a little bit of CGI in it, used mostly to enhance it rather than replace them, which I love about that. So, it was a great movie overall. What I really appreciated on the story aspect was the story, the emotional side. Alice isn't Ash. She isn't Mia. She's simply trying to survive while dealing with loss of her husband. And that grief becomes the emotional core of the film. Now, let's get to the fun, the ending. The finale is just pure Evil Dead. Alice survives by burning the house, seemingly ending the nightmare. But if you watched Evil Dead, you know that it never stays dead. And this movie reminds you that you don't beat evil forever. You only survive it. So, let's talk about the mid-credits scene. So that's the very first awesome surprise. So during the middle of the credits, Grandma Polly, who's part of the family, you thought that she was dead, but actually she's alive. Well, not really. She's deadite alive. So after escaping the burning house, she's crawling down the road missing a leg. A woman stops to help her. Polly looks up, and she's like, "She stole my legs, but yours will do just fine." And then she attacks. Screen fades to black. That tells us something very important, that the evil has already begun spreading again. Now let's move on to the final post-credits scene. Yes, there are two of them. So this one was crazy. This one was the scene that had a lot of horror fans talking, and it even had me kind of tripping out. So inside there's this crematorium. A young girl wanders among rows of unclaimed urns. One urn bears a familiar name. Ellie. Ellie? Well, Ellie from the Evil Dead Rise. The mom. If anybody remembers. The girl looks into a mirror, and then all of a sudden you see Deadeye Ellie appears behind her in a reflection. And then, snap. Ellie kills the girl before looking into the camera and saying, "Mommy's back." That single line may change the entire future of this franchise. So, what does it mean? This could be the first time that these standalone Evil Dead stories are being connected. For years, every film felt like it was its own story, its own nightmare, so to speak. Now we're seeing returning Deadites, returning characters, shared continuity. It raises a huge question, though. Could the different Necronomicons finally be colliding? Could Evil Dead Wrath become the first true crossover between these modern films? We won't know yet. But industry reports have already indicated that the next film, Evil Dead Wrath, is planned for 2028. So, my final rating, 9.5 out of 10. The acting was good. The practical effects, phenomenal. I'll never see a dishwasher being used the same way. The atmosphere was very oppressive. The violence was unforgettable. If I have one criticism of this whole movie, maybe a little bit more Evil Dead humor, but that's just a minor complaint out of everything that I saw. This movie proves that the franchise is still evolving while respecting what is legendary, what made it legendary. Now let's talk about where the franchise could be heading. So, Warner Brothers and Ghost House Pictures aren't slowing down. The next chapter, Evil Dead Wrath, is already finished filming and is currently scheduled for release in April 2028. It will be directed by Francis Galuppi, with Sam Raimi and Robert Tapert producing once again. Reports also indicate that Wrath will be a prequel, people. I love it. A prequel. Before the events of the original 1981 film, making it the earliest story in the Evil Dead timeline. So I have a couple theories. So, one of my biggest theories is that we're going to finally learn the complete history of the 3 books of the dead. And while I say this, if anybody remembers, all the way back to Army of Darkness, there were 3 books in that movie, obviously, and Ash had to pick which one, and and he messed up the whole phrase. But there was a circle of men, and I don't know if you just heard what I said just a few minutes ago. The circle of men is actually small, is maybe a bigger part in the franchise that might come about. So, maybe the original gentleman who found the Necronomicon 1981's Evil Dead, and this grandfather from that they mentioned in Evil Dead Burn, and even maybe these priests that they talked about, burying this other version of the Necronomicon. Maybe they were all part of the circle of men. So, something to think about. It might actually start tying it all in. Who knows? But that's part of my theory about that. And we have seen different versions of the Necronomicon. What if Wrath explains where they all came from? Who created them? Why are there multiple books? And why do they all seem to summon the same ancient evil? Something to think about. The other thing that I was thinking about is Ellie isn't finished. It's mind-boggling because she went to wood chipper. I don't know how she came back, but the post-credit scene in Burn strongly hints that Ellie is far from gone. Deadites simply don't die. If Ellie's spirit is still active, she could become one of the franchise's most dangerous villains, reoccurring, connecting Rise and Burn into a larger story. Now, I know I would love to see this happen, but I don't know if it will. But Ash Williams returns? Question mark. Bruce Campbell has repeatedly said Ash is retired, but we've heard that before. Imagine if Wrath ends with a younger Ash's family discovering the Necronomicon, or perhaps the ending leads directly into the opening of the original Evil Dead. That would be one of the greatest full circle moments in horror history. Now, take note though, there's been no official announcement that Bruce Campbell will appear in Evil Dead Wrath. So, Now, the other theory I have on top of that is Sam Raimi has spoken about creating a broader roadmap for future Evil Dead stories. What if Burn and Wrath are really only the beginning? Imagine one final film where survivors from the 2013 Evil Dead, Evil Dead Rise, Evil Dead Burn, and even Ash himself all unite against an army of Deadites. That would be the biggest Evil Dead movie ever made. So, if Evil Dead Burn proved anything, it's that this franchise still has new stories to tell. Different characters, different directors, different locations. But one constant remains. The Necronomicon always finds someone foolish or dumb enough to read from it. And as long as someone opens that book, the Evil Dead will never truly die. Until next time, read from the Necronomicon. If you dare. Because once the words are spoken, the burn is only the beginning. So what did you think? Was Evil Dead Burn the best movie since the 2013 reboot? Did you like it more than Evil Dead Rise? If you guys have saw it, put in the comments. I'd love to hear about it. Here's the biggest question. Do you think Ellie is going to become the next major Deadite of the franchise? Or could Ash Williams finally return one last time? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, remember, read from the Necronomicon, and the shadows will always answer. This has been Scars and Shadows. I'm just going to give you a little bit of update here, where I'm going to start implementing some new things on this. So, little snippets, so to speak, hint, hint. You guys, hopefully you guys can get on there and check that out. We are going to, the next episode, it will be another review of another one, which will be The Walking Dead, Dead City. Freaking awesome first episode of the newest season. Gotta talk about it. And then we're going to switch gears and we're going to talk more about PTSD. And we are going to talk more about and get into the VA and things for veterans. And we're going to break that down into small little chunks because there's a lot to talk about. So that's going to be a long series. But we are going to jump back and forth a little bit, make it fun, talk about other stuff, and bounce back and forth a little bit. So I hope that stuff gets shared so we can help veterans out there. I myself am a veteran, obviously, you guys know that, who has been watching. If we can help anybody out there, even if they're not a veteran, but I really want to give these veterans the help that they need, give them the advice that they need, the tools, hopefully, to help guide them, those that are lost, and anybody else along the way. So that's what the show is about, and this podcast, and I hope it grows, and we'll see you guys next time.
From the deepest shadows, where secrets are kept and stories are buried, a new tale is about to emerge. We often walk through life, thinking we know the people around us, that we understand the world we live in. But what if everything you thought was true is just a carefully constructed facade? What if beneath the surface of everyday life, there are scars left by events we dare not speak of, and shadows that follow our every move? Get ready to question everything. We about to pull back the curtain and expose the hidden truths that lie just beyond our sight in the world of scars and shadows. What is lurking in your blind spot? Subscribe now and let's find out together. You won't want to miss what's coming next.